All right, we are back, and like I told you just a few seconds ago when we logged on together, I am digging your look, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, yeah, very distinguished. I like it. The beard is back. You're looking good, man.
Notice a little weight loss.
Maybe that's what it is too. Yeah, you look good, brother.
Yeah,
Seriously.
I've been working out a little bit. Hopefully, by the time we get to Myrtle Beach, that it'll be a little different look for me.
Yeah, Myrtle Beach. All right, so I'm not sure if we were going to talk about this or not, but yeah. So for those of you who are in the cornhole world, you probably know by now. For those who aren't, our first main event, I guess you can say, Bernie,
Sure.
with the college national championships. I think the high school championships now are going to be involved. Sounds like there might be a big open involved with this.
Yeah,
I don't know,
there's
man. But
there's
Myrtle Beach
always
could be huge.
there's always a pro event there.
So New Year's Eve, that whole weekend, a few days before New Year's Eve this year, a few days after, back in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to really get everything cranked up for the year.
It's kind of cool, man. I mean, no offense to Myrtle Beach, but I mean, you've been there. I mean, it's when you're in the off season, you are in the way off season. You know what I mean? Like it's
pretty quiet.
Living in Charleston, for example, you still have stuff there. You still have the history that's there. You still have the restaurant scene, all of that. So you still have people kind of coming in and out, even during the quote unquote down season. Not so much in Myrtle Vegas. I mean, it is a dead time. So
it's pretty quiet down by the beach.
But it's fun. But that makes it kind of fun in its own way because we bring our own little world down there and kind of populate the beach for a few days. It's always a lot of fun.
All right. So since we're talking about cornhole, I almost said pornhole. What the hell? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, what you been watching?
From? Wow. Where'd that come from? Yeah. So anyway, since we're talking about cornhole, all right. So last week you brought this up. We kind of touched on it. Yeah. But I think it's worth hitting on again. And again, this is kind of a great subject for those of you who are in the cornhole world and for those who aren't. Bernie, I remember when I first got into this world now almost 3 years ago. And I was just kind of going around, asking people, kind of probing, who's the greatest cornhole player of all time? Like, who's that legendary player? And at the time, Matt Guy, I didn't know about because he wasn't in the ACL. He's in a different league, playing a different circuit. Right. And so, I was going around. I'm saying, is Jamie Guy the best? Is it Noah Wooten? Is it, these other players who I just met? Who's and all of them. And I think it was Damon Dennis who first told me. He said, brother, he's like, until you see a guy named Matt Guy play, you will never be able to tell me that you've seen the all-time greatest player play the sport of cornhole. So all I ever heard about for my first year was Matt Guy, and this legendary player. And he comes over to the ACL. Obviously, he's been with the ACL now the last couple of years, and going into this past season, and actually just up until recently, was regarded as the all-time winningest cornhole player in the history of the sport. And then Trey Ryder last season during the off season, I kept saying, we kept saying, Matt Guy is the all-time, greatest player, right? But we wanted to quantify that. So then Trey, just to his credit, just grinded back in the history books, right? And we put a number to that. And sure enough, the player with the most career all-time wins was Matt Guy. Mm-hmm. But Jamie Graham was kind of on his heels. He was behind him by maybe 4, all-time career wins, something like this. And you mentioned it last week. We didn't have a whole lot of time to dive into this, but all of a sudden, Jamie Graham now, after winning in Louisville, sweeping both singles and doubles, is now tied with Matt Guy in all-time career wins in the sport of cornhole. I mean, I think this is a significant thing. I mean, we have a chance, maybe not this weekend in Louisville. We'll see because Matt and Jamie are also doubles partners, so it's kind of going to be hard for them to leapfrog each other. But I think this is a big deal. I mean, Jamie at some point this season, if it's not this weekend, maybe later, maybe it's during a national, has a chance to pass Matt Guy to be the all-time winningest player in the sport of cornhole. I mean, I think this is a big deal.
Yeah, especially from the ACL side. Look, you're going to get some of the old heads, right, that have been around for decade plus that'll talk about another circuit that they all played on back in the day. And Matt truly dominated that era.
Yeah, correct.
Truly dominated that era. And that's kind of where that mystique, the myth kind of came from with Matt Guy. Right. Since the ACL has been around, you're looking at 2016, 2017 on. and then what Jamie Graham's been able to do. And Jamie had a lot of success back then too, but he was just so young, right? But now you get to a point to where Jamie is quickly becoming, I think, you know what, telling story. We had our bracket breakdown for the Louisville Open on Monday night. Trey and I were doing it. And Trey talked about having some of the pros in, and they were doing some video work at the HQ. And they were asking all these pros, besides yourself, who's the best player in the game? And Trey was saying about 75% of those pros said Jamie Graham. I mean, that's a lot
that is a lot
for your own peers. And we're talking elite players that, kind of view Jamie as the best. And going into this season, I felt that Jamie had a lot to prove internally, emotionally. I think that he feels like he is the best player. I think that he has reverence for Matt Guy, but I think he feels like, especially right now, present day, he's the best player. He's the most well-rounded player. And I think by the end of this 2022-2023 season, he's going to be, by our record books, the greatest player ever, because obviously they play doubles together, so neither one's going to get a leg up on the other that way. Well, I mean, I guess they could in opens, but I just think Jamie's going to have a very successful season singles-wise. I mean, obviously he's already won the first Open. I think he's going to be he is anyway, but I think this year especially, he's going to be a serious contender in every event that he plays in singles. And I'm sure Matt Guy would feel the same. I just think the game is getting to a certain point to where variety, you have to have something.
Right.
I mean, you've got the Matt Guys and the Damon Dennises that are just going to slide it and airmail it when they have to, slide it, airmail it when they have to, and that's their game. They
totally
do it at such an elite level. Still,
the game's changed.
But at some point, the game's changed a little bit, and whether it's a little cut shot, even Damon Dennis has kind of added a little cut to his game. So I think because of the way that Jamie, like you've said many times in a baseball reference, is a 5-tool player. He's got 5 different shots that he can go to, and he's an expert at all of them. I think you're going to see him kind of take that mantle as the greatest player in the game.
Yeah, just real quick, going into, here's the list. I mean, just 4 or 5 names off the top for those of you who don't know. So Matt Guy, Jamie Graham tied. So they are the Jack Nicklaus of the sport right now. They've got 18 career titles. Trey Birchfield, not too far behind, actually. Trey a little quiet last year, but he has 13. Brett Guy is on their heels with 10. And then Ryan Windsor with 9, Eric Davis with 9, Mark Richards, of course, with that huge breakout year as a rookie year last year. Also in the mix somewhat. He's at 8, and then it kind of starts to fall off after that. But that's kind of the list of the all-time winningest players in ACL history.
Yeah, Mark Richards is 8 Mark Richards is 8, by the way, or in 1 year. That's pretty
came in 1 year. Yeah. But that's another big question everyone's talking about, and everyone's talked about already. We don't need to dive into it, but he'll be. Is there a sophomore slump, or is he gonna do it again? We'll find out, obviously.
I mean, honestly, just to talk about it briefly, there's no way he can have as good a year as he did last year. He's 1 point away from sweeping everything, right? I mean, he was the singles world champion. He's 1 point away from being the doubles world champion. He was the mixed doubles world champion. I mean, come on. There's no way he can live up to that.
Yeah.
Again,
it's going to be tough to beat.
Right?
8 career titles in 1 year. Yeah. That's impressive.
But I would not be surprised if we see that from Jamie Graham this year.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'm with you. I'm with you. You know, he's been one of my favorites to watch ever since I first got in the sport. So I wouldn't be surprised. All right. 2 more quick things before we get to our guest today. I don't know if we want to start a shout out segment or not. Might be kind of cool because we actually do hear from our 15 or 20 listeners
yes, from time to time. Hardcore, man. They are in.
So maybe we start a shout out segment, but TJ, I won't give last names to spare any type of
social media
privacy.
bombardment.
Yeah. But so TJ reached out to us on Facebook. He was listening last week with Terry Kirby, and Terry talked about, Terry, 10-year NFL veteran, now jumping in the cornhole world, wants to be a pro. And he talked about, basically developing his game, starting with the basics. Like he wants to get really good at throwing one shot first. He feels like it's so easy to get so consumed with wanting to be able to throw a roll bag, wanting to be able to find a cut shot, all these other crazy shots that all the players are throwing. And so he's just practicing on the basics first. And so TJ was listening to the show and he said, hey, it's the same with other sports. His daughter is a really good softball player and a pitcher. And he said, my daughter, when she first started throwing or pitching in softball, her pitching coach said the same thing. I am not letting you throw a curve, I'm not letting you throw a riser, all these other crazy pitches that they have in softball until you can prove to me that you can paint each corner of the strike zone with your fastball. So dominate one, which is exactly what you talked about last week. Dominate one pitch first, then move on. Be an expert first in one, then move on. I thought that was a great message.
I mean, it is. I mean, think about it in terms of life. A greater, I can only speak for myself, but like I can hold a fairly intelligent conversation about a great many things, but I can't really hold a truly intelligent conversation about any one thing. And what's more important in life, I think, is you're going to find is to find that one thing that you're, kind of a master at, and then kind of, you use that to go on through life. But I mean, in sports, I mean, it's so entertaining, right? I mean, we see it in cornhole all the time. Everybody wants to throw the roll bag, the cut, they want to try all these different shots, and that's awesome. And then all of a sudden they get deep in a bracket and they run into a Matt guy who's just going to throw 2 shots, but he does them better than everyone else, and they lose. And they're wondering why, how did I lose to this guy again? It's just, look, he's mastered the one. He's mastered that shot. And when you're making mistakes, he's not.
It's so true, Bernie. And to kind of segue into our guest, I think it's true in sports, and I think it's true in life. And I think our guest today is a great example of that, because he, although is a brilliant guy, very, very smart, he chose one avenue and chose to be an expert in that one avenue. It's been very successful to him. So kind of a good segue for our guest. But real quick, meet Jeff and Bernie. I can't believe how fast these shows go, by the way. I feel like all of a sudden we've had so much to talk about. We've had no time to do meet Jeff and Bernie.
Right.
But I thought about you this weekend because those who saw on social media. So my daughter, Noelle, has narrowed it down to her final 4 schools: Alabama, Clemson, South Carolina, and then Coastal Carolina. I know Coastal sounds funny, but it's right down the road from us. She thinks maybe it'd be nice to be close to home. Coastal's a really cool little campus, so maybe she'd like that environment, but whatever. So we went to Alabama this weekend. But on a serious note, while we had so much fun, Bernie, at the football game, walking around campus, touring, everything like it, I thought about you, man, because in one of our early episodes, you and I kind of opened up about why you didn't have kids, or why maybe you didn't think you'd be a good dad, because it's a ton of responsibility. And as much and as much fun as we had driving to Alabama, enjoyed our weekend driving back, I'd be lying to you if I sat here and told you I didn't have a few moments this weekend where I was like, wow, shit. I mean, this is a huge decision for her. Like, I'm helping her, guide her through this decision, but it's gonna be 4 different paths of life. Whether she goes to Alabama, whether she goes to Clemson, whether she goes to South Carolina or Coastal, each one of those paths is a huge difference. It's like the movie Sliding Doors. I mean, there are 4 sliding doors in front of her, and depending on which door she picks is going to shape the rest of her life. And it's a big decision, man. I thought about you because I'm like, wow, there's a huge responsibility here. Yeah,
it's interesting you say that. I mean, what does she want? Is she picking those schools because of courses, or is she just thinking, I'll figure it out once I'm there? Because, obviously every school has its thing that they're kind of known for. So if she's just looking for the best environment and then she'll figure out what she wants to do, I say Alabama or Clemson.
Right. Yeah. And it depends on, part of her, and that's up to her. It's ultimately going to be her decision. But, the fact that I'm helping guide her through this, and her mom's helping guide her through this.
Yeah.
It speaks to what you and I talked about. I mean, this is one of those parenting
tough
that, I mean, it's fun and it's exciting, but there's a lot of pressure on it, dude. I mean, I mean, for me as a dad, because I don't want to steer her wrong.
Right.
And I feel I do, for some reason, I felt like a lot of anxiety and pressure about that this week.
Yeah. I mean, I would like,
we did have fun though.
Yeah, like we talked about before. I mean, I think my biggest worry was, I've made a pretty big mess of my life. I don't think I could live with myself if I did that to a child. You know what I mean?
I still think you'd be a good dad because of your past. But yeah, I get it though. I get it. What you said is right. I mean, there's a lot of pressure, and
there's a lot of ways to mess up a human being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You mess around, you do the wrong thing for 5 to 10 years. They're living with that forever.
Well, the old saying in parenting is something like, I mean, you can either be a great example or a great mentor or a horrific example, right? I mean, it can go either way as a parent. So, all right, you ready? Let's get to our guest. We've had him on hold here long enough. So, so happy that we finally been able to connect with this guy. Many of you in the cornhole world, well, all of you in the cornhole world will know him. For those of you outside of the cornhole world, you're going to enjoy this show. He has a master's in mechanical engineering, which already means he's way smarter than us. He moved to San Diego and started his career in aerospace in 1999. He then, years later, rented a small warehouse space in 2007 to have a shop to work on some fun projects on the side. And so what did he do? Started making cornhole bags and boards. And he then formed a relationship, Bernie, with you and Stacy around 2010. Went full time in the cornhole business, which is exactly what we're talking about. He picked a lane and just mastered it. That was back in 2013. Ultra bags were developed in 2016, fine-tuned for a few years. They actually changed their name to Ultra Cornhole as a company to kind of better fit what they were doing. Had more of a focus on elite level cornhole products. His Viper bags, which are just epic bags, so popular right now, hit the market in 2019, and the rest is absolute history. So please welcome to the show the founder of Ultra Cornhole. If you don't know, again, it's one of the largest cornhole product companies in the world. Welcome to BoarderLine, Mark Pryor. What's up, Mark?
Hey, guys. Thank you.
I'm so
great introduction. Appreciate it. You guys had some topics going there I wanted to chime in on so bad.
Well, we can do. We've got time. So
hey, we got time, man. Jump in.
First things first. I'm glad that you liked my intro because you wrote it. But no, seriously, man, I'm so happy to connect with you. You and I have talked away from the show and at several events we wanted to have you on. So I appreciate your time. So, so first off, are you home? Are you in San Diego?
I'm in San Diego. I'm in my my place here.
Jealous.
Just trying to take care of some business. I spend most of my time kind of at a desk now, at home, just navigating things, especially now since it was, the new season, and we're trying to lock in the team. It's a juggernaut of just hammering and just trying to get people together and adjusting and seeing where the budget's at and cringing. So,
all right. Well, before we get to your teams and your players, you've signed some really high-level players, and you've signed a lot of them, which we'll talk about as well. All right. So you want to chime in on a few of these subjects? I don't even know. I mean, are you a dad? Do you have kids or no?
I do. I have two daughters. One just turned 13, and then another one's 10. And I was at soccer practice with a 10-year-old yesterday, and it's a blast. I mean, I hear where you're at, and I look forward to that. I remember when my dad dropped me off at the campus of UCSB, Gauchos, #1 school in partying.
In partying.
Yeah. And I remember when he dropped me off, we were just, cruising into the campus, and it's like Campus Point is, there's ocean kind of surrounding like two corners of this thing. And my dorm is like right there on the ocean. And my dad's like, "You lucky son of a beast."
Yeah, that is
we didn't have that. We didn't have that at Kansas.
Yeah. I'm going to be in those shoes just like you are now. And it's crazy how life, just kind of, moves right along on the conveyor belt. But it's exciting. And, I'm very much fortunate. I think I have, healthy kids, and my health is okay, and got a great company and great brand and great team, both the players and the people behind the scenes doing the work. So I feel very fortunate. Yeah.
What about your thoughts on Jamie Graham, the other topic we were talking about? I mean, he's got a chance to pass Matt Guy. I mean, is this a big deal, do you think, for all the people that are in the sport of cornhole, or not? Or do we make too big a deal out of this all-time winningest list?
No, it's great. It's great that we have a sport where we're tracking these things. It's amazing how we just, we're at the forefront of this sport, really. I mean, it did start, kind of competitively in like 2005-ish, but the way it's kind of ramped up, we're all right in the situation where it's like, all these stats are being maintained. You're talking about stats. We have these player sponsorships, which is just, insane, right? It's turning into pro baseball, pro football, right? In terms of just the stats and the sponsorships and the excitement. So is it a big deal? Yes, it's a big deal, because people care about it. People are wanting to know, like, which player is, the best in the world, which player is the best currently. Matt Guy's just held that for so long. It's been so dominant. Like you said, Bernie, you can have, or Jeff, you both mentioned, he has like 2 shots, really. I mean, it's just straight in and it's airmail. He wants a 12 every freaking time, and he will do whatever it takes to acquire that 12.
Right.
And we see that, and it's, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't lately, right? There's been, people that are, effective at blocking, and maybe he's just a little bit off, and that airmail misses by a sliver. But for the longest time, it's been so dominant. I have a feeling it's going to reappear. I feel like every time he gets a little bit back, he comes back stronger. Jamie's been just amazing. I mean, what can you say about that guy? He's just so solid on the court. Just the foundation and just the mechanics. Really an unstoppable force, it seems. But there were some, cracks. We had a couple players that are able to, come in and have that spotlight too, which is great. Very excited about this upcoming season and seeing what some of those rookie players last year will do in their second year. Will there be a sophomore slump? Will there be a bump in performance? So it's going to be exciting.
Speaking of Jamie, and I'm gonna talk about Jamie for a second, and then I'm gonna lead into my question for you. One of the things that I think helps Jamie going forward is Jamie has. You just talked about Matt. Matt has 2 shots. Matt has made those. He has fine-tuned those to an expert level. Jamie could probably say that about 4 shots specifically, and maybe 5. And as the game's changing, he's staying at the forefront of the game. You've been around the game for a long time, and you've been kind of a vanguard at times. I mean, let's go back to the 5-point slot on your boards back in 2010. I mean, you are a person that's been thinking on a forward level about the sport. Do you think that helps Jamie? Do you think that helps some of your players kind of attain that new level of elite status that maybe we're getting into an era now that the 1 or 2 shots is going to keep you near the top, but can you be at the top with only 2 shots?
I mean, look, if you have 2 shots and you're perfect at them, you're going to win, right? If all your bags keep going in the hole, nobody's going to beat you. However, that doesn't always happen. You're going to miss a shot from time to time. There's going to be some traffic. What Jamie does with his push shot is probably the most precision, high velocity throw there is in the game. Right. You have Eric Davis, which has the highest velocity push shot in the game, but it can be a little bit here or there. But I mean, Eric Davis is probably one of my favorite push shots in the game. But as far as like pure accuracy with velocity, I don't think anybody touches Jamie Graham. So having that bag in your arsenal when you need to kind of push through traffic, Matt just doesn't have that shot. He doesn't have a high velocity shot. He knows that if he changes velocity, that's really going to screw him up because he practices with a particular velocity. It's open board slide, it's airmail, Yep. So yeah, well, absolutely. Mark, those shots will help you have in your arsenal. Yeah.
So many topics to cover with you, and we might even have to do 2 shows because the time always runs out so fast on these things. But sure. before we dive into that rabbit hole too much, because I think it's fascinating about. I mean, if anyone can speak to the history of the cornhole bag and the evolution of the bag to what it is now, I mean, you pretty much brought the bag out of the dark ages. It's guys like you, and I'd love to do that. But first, I've got to know like your personal story. I mean, we were just talking about it. I mean, from your background in mechanical engineering and then starting a career in aerospace in 1999 and then cornhole. It's like, what the hell, man? Like, how did you get into cornhole? You're obviously a brilliant guy, but it kind of goes back to what we were speaking about. Like choose your lane, right? I mean, pick a lane, be an expert at it. But I mean, how did you get from aerospace engineering into cornhole?
Sure. There's a couple things that kind of led me down that path. One was when I was as early as I can remember, I'd visit my grandparents in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And there was this, small beanbag toss board that my uncle had made. And he was, had roots in Ohio area, and this board was like 2 foot by 2 foot with a hole in the center, and the bean bags were like, maybe this big with some rocks in it or something, or maybe some, beans. And we just absolutely loved it. And my grandfather, we played him when he was like 95 years old. And I have pictures of that, and so just having that in my memory, and then going into aerospace where it's very difficult to innovate in aerospace. As a young engineer, I had just so many ideas and I wanted to implement these things. And you just have the old guard there saying, hey, there's no heritage with your ideas. We love them, but, we're not going to get Boeing to sign off on this. We're not going to get this, whatever your idea is, flown. You have to get NASA to kind of maybe invest in it and then want to put it on a demonstrator, right? So that process just was agonizing for me. I couldn't stand not being able to innovate under my own terms. And Cornhole was a chance for me to kind of do that, to make something that I could mass produce rather than spend, half or a decade or two developing technologies that never go anywhere. So,
So you were basically, you were looking for something that you could make a difference in.
Yeah, essentially that was it. Yeah, and it was just such a fun thing. You can go to a party and talk about cornhole. You can't really get into conversation about the reflector on a satellite and why I'm trying to reduce the weight by a few kilograms, right? And the frequency modes on it and how it relates to launch and how it could break up. So once you start getting into those details, people just glaze over, understandably.
Yeah, I'm feeling sleepy already.
Cornhole, Cornhole, you can just start saying, hey, man, I got this new bag, and everybody you're the life of the party, You go from a dud to, somebody interesting. So I kind of wanted a little bit of that. So,
So all right. So you get into cornhole early, mid to late 2000s. What was it that kind of solidified in your head, this is the direction I want to go? Because you had this background, obviously you're getting into something, but it takes a while for things to kind of take off. And when was it? What was the aha moment for you when you're like, I can do this. This is the rest of my life. Let's make this happen.
Oh, great question.
Wow, that's something we've never heard on the show before.
Right? It's a first.
Wow, Bernie, great question.
Yeah.
Juggling your full-time job and doing a side hustle that was at the time, it was very seasonal. So come around April, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm getting these orders coming in and I'm like stressing out and I'm trying to finish up a project. You don't want to shortchange your primary employer. So, you try to balance it, and it started getting too crazy. I couldn't balance it anymore. And when did I think that I wanted to do it full time? Was probably, when I left my full-time employment. I decided that, it's getting around April, it's getting to be way too busy. And so, at that time, it's tough though. You go from a guaranteed salary to something that you can't guarantee.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I was making more than I was, in aerospace at that point in time.
I'm guessing you took a little bit of a pay cut.
Yeah, you do that for a while if you're kind of going after your passion. And I guess my passion was just to, to do something on my own and not really have to ask anybody, right?
Yeah.
I think that was my primary thing was, my whole time in aerospace, just trying to do something, you really have to cross a lot of difficult bridges to get something done. Whereas if you're the business owner, you have so much flexibility. You're like, I want to make a new bag. Okay, we'll go make a new bag. Nobody to really talk to about it other than yourself. But it is kind of interesting now where we have, I think like 20-ish employees now here in San Diego and Hawaii. And we have just a really good group of people where they're taking on a lot of those responsibilities that I've carried for so long, and so that feels good to be able to kind of let other people champion those things. And, I can take a little bit of step back on some of those responsibilities and focus, a little bit on technology, we're coming out with a new board we're pretty excited about. So I've been in the shop just trying to tune the CNC and trying to tune some other things, making some test samples, measuring strength of different things. And so those things that really excite me, that's kind of what I was groomed to do, to do those things. And so we spent so much time on the players and the sponsorships and trying to fit the team together. And now I'm like kind of handing off things, and people are on my team are just able to accept them, and they're just champion them and go with it. So that feels good.
Hey, Mark, was it difficult for you, and is it still difficult for you to manage kind of the business side of the operations with marketing? How difficult was it for you to learn that? Because I can just hear it in your mind. Your brain works differently. Like, you are all in on numbers and theories, right? And probably physics. I mean, with the way that you talk about the dimensions and the size already just of your cornhole boards and your bags, I can tell it excites you. But yet, you still as the owner of a company have had to balance the business side also. Was that a tough transition? Is it still hard for you?
I wear all of the hats pretty much. I'll be in the bathrooms cleaning them. I'm not afraid, and I never have been. I feel fortunate that everything has worked out as well as it's had. Would I have done better if I had hired somebody to take care of, just the business side and I focused on the technology side? Maybe. It's interesting because there's so many talented people, and if you try to do everything yourself, you're maybe not doing it the best. I can look back at times where there's other companies that I was like looking at, I'm like, wow, they're doing a really good job at it. They're growing so good and everything is happening so well. And I'm, sitting here in the shop making onesie twosies type of things, So there's definitely lessons learned with trying to manage your time and utilize other people as effectively as possible. I still think I probably can improve in those areas.
Well, I think you had a great point though, Mark, because your company obviously is very, very successful. You've been doing it for a long time now. And what we hear from other people is, whether you're a captain on a sports team or you're the CEO of a company, hiring good people, hiring a good team to help you with maybe deficiencies that you have is critical to a successful company. So it sounds like that was hugely important for you.
Yes. Yeah, it was. Thanks.
Also, real quick, one thing I've noticed, Jeff, about people that are successful in business, they got in because they're tired of answering to someone else.
Yeah.
It is a common thread all the way through. I don't care what person you're talking about, but every business owner I've ever known or read about or seen on television, whatever, at some point they got tired of having to answer to someone, and they knew that they knew enough. Does that make sense? They knew, I don't need this person's opinion anymore. I'm better than this. Let me go ahead and do this. Let me get all these people out of the way and let me go ahead and do this.
Sometimes you don't know. And that's a scary thing. You don't know if you're smart enough to do it. And you don't know when you go into business for yourself for the first time. You don't know squat diddly. And I guess that's been the main thing that I try to do is I never took a loan out. I just always tried to manage it organically as small as I could. And I see some people blowing up, their shop and stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, they're taking some gambles and risks. This economy isn't exactly the most stable thing I've ever seen. So I think there's a lot of risk taking going on right now. It's
sure.
If we talk about what, sponsoring players right now, if you add up, all the value of sponsorship, I think that's a pretty substantial number right now. And I think it grows every year, right? And it all kind of hinges a little bit on, the success of the ACL, and what the team there is doing behind the scenes to grow the sport, and to gain visibility within the sport, because that's what the sponsorships are relying on, really. They're going, well, I hope my player makes it on ESPN, so I can, see my brand under the lights. I mean, that's important. So it's super intriguing. We did a lot last season, and financially and in terms of sponsoring players, and we're repeating that, maybe even a little bit bigger. Part of that is the circle of cornhole, or the circle of life. I like to look at it that way, where we get a lot of money for our bags, but then we distribute that back to the players, and those players then go play more tournaments, and they influence the game. And so in a way, when we sponsor a lot of money to a lot of players, we're really helping that the growth of cornhole in that way. And it's not super intuitive that for people on the outside to look at it that way, but I think everybody that sponsors a pro player should feel like you're doing something to the sport and helping to grow it, because you're helping the best players in the world travel and grow the sport. So it feels really good.
Well, I'm glad you went down that road, Mark, because we actually had several people who have, because we've known now for the last couple of weeks we're going to have you on. So we've had several people who have reached out to us wanting to know what your philosophy is on sponsoring players, because you have someone like a Jason McCannon. He's putting all of his eggs in one basket, right, so to speak. Like, he's got Matt Guy, he's got Jamie Graham, he has Brett Guy, Eric Davis. I mean, some of the top players in the world, and that's about it. And then you get Mike Hennessy with Lucky Bags, goes after world number one, Mark Richards. And then you've got Mark Pryor with Ultra Cornhole, and you've got some great players signed, but you really, maybe you don't have the number one player in the world, the top two players in the world, but you've got a lot of other, including a cat in your lab.
And a giant
multi-talented,
cat.
but you got a lot of other players. So what is your philosophy behind let's go after the top 2 or 3 versus let's go after 20 and spread it out?
Yeah, it's so interesting, because you can't really say one way is super right or wrong in terms of Jason and having some of the top players appear continuously under the lights. I mean, that's very effective way to grow your brand. My approach is a little bit different. I like to have a large team. Right now we currently have 45 pros and 10 PDC players signed. I don't think there's anybody else in the business that is carrying that kind of team, and we're supporting those players. Absolutely, we're giving them money to help fund their travels, right? And that money goes right back into the sport of cornhole, right? So I mean, yeah, some of it goes to the airlines and to the hotels, but them being able to kind of go and compete at these things and showing up, and players that are maybe younger or new to the sport watching these players, that's what grows the sport. Having some of the big names come to San Diego and play with us at our small tournaments, that helped grow it, because people would come out just to watch them play. So back to your point, I think our team, we have some really good talent, and I'm not going to be surprised if some of these newer names shock the world, either in singles or in doubles. There's just, a plethora of talent, and at any tournament they can do it. And that's the thing, when you go to these tournaments, it's really a crapshoot as to what's going to happen. But time and time again, we tend to see the cream float to the top. But in some cases, like last season, we Noel Monza, for example, he was not very well known. We took a chance on him, and man, he really lit it up for us. And we totally whiffed on a couple. I mean, at that point in time, last season, it's like now, we have like 45 pros, and I'm sitting there kind of going, okay, we have to, stop at some point. But Mark Richards, was available, and they're asking us for sponsorships. And I guess they, through the dealings, they fell through the crack, right? So, whoops. You never know who's going to come in and just, blow it up. But that's the exciting part for me. If we can help form a team, and then that team does well, and it's unexpected, that is really what excites me. That's what gets me going.
Mark, did you have a chance to get Mark Richards? Like for those who don't know, because we get a lot of people who watch this podcast who don't necessarily, live and breathe the sport of cornhole.
All 10 of them actually aren't really involved in cornhole as much as.
Did you have a chance to get Mark Richards? I mean, did it come down to like other sports? Was it a bidding war?
Oh, this season?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we did our best to submit our bid, and I don't really like to chase and overinflate, even though it's probably warranted. Like I just would rather distribute, and give chances.
Sure.
And get, when you create a team, it is cool, throughout the season, because everybody's kind of helping each other out. Everybody's supporting each other, going to the courts, cheering each other on. That's a good thing,
I love your philosophy. I love your team philosophy, because I think that speaks to your goal. Is with that team philosophy, you are getting a large presence at the games, at the events, at Spencer McKenzie's. You are seeing a lot of people walk around wearing exactly what you're wearing right now. Team Ultra, hats, shirts. You see them all over the place. So it's interesting. Whether you want to chase the top players or whether you want that presence, but there's no doubt about it. When you go to an event, Ultra Cornhole, everywhere you walk, you can't not see it.
Yeah, and to Mark's point and your point, Jeff. If you go, let's get away from the bigger events. Let's go to your local blind draw. You're going to see Ultra bags everywhere because you've kind of put them out everywhere. It almost seems like it's an attainable brand. Not talking about the prices or anything like that, but just the way that it's distributed seems like an attainable brand from the average player. To whereas someone might see Fire, I don't know necessarily, but someone might see Fire as, wow, the people that play Fire are just that good. Maybe I'm just not good enough to play on that level with that bag. But Ultra's got a bag for me because they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous in the game of cornhole. You like you're saying, Jeff, you can't go to a cornhole tournament and not see Ultra.
I guess if you were to look at it this way, like the number of podiums, maybe not the quality of podium, but the number of podiums, Ultra will probably have the most podiums this season. From your locals to your regionals to your conference and state, and maybe the opens, right? We're hoping for that, and we're hoping for some nationals, and we're hoping for some worlds. You never know what's going to happen.
Sure,
but we're going to get the most people holding up the bag, and that's part about having a big team. They're not obviously probably. Some are right top 10, but the majority probably in the team is somewhere in the top 100, right?
Right.
But there's new players that are coming in, so there's a lot of exciting things going on. I don't know. I'm curious to see how it works out.
For sure, yeah. And it's putting pressure. Going back to the beginning of what we were talking about here in the show, puts pressure on bag manufacturers like yourself and the others we talked about, trying to figure out who's going to be the next biggest, best thing, right? In every aspect of the sport. So, all right, we're going to run out of time. I can't believe we've been on the air here already for almost 45 minutes. But I've got to ask you real quick, Mark, because you and I talked about this in Vegas, just in the last couple minutes that we have, and we'll have you back on and have a whole show about this. But people always ask me, what is in the cornhole bag? What is it made of? Like, how did I know there's some proprietary stuff there you can't talk about, but you of all people can talk about what the bag used to be versus what it is now. Can you talk about, without giving away any of your secret batch with the Ultra bags? Can you talk about the differences of where the bags were, just 8-10 years ago, made of, like you said, actual corn, whatever was in there, to what it is now? Like what is it now versus what it was?
All right. Little known fact. I've never made a bag that had corn in it or any kind of organic thing. Resin is kind of an organic material, but we've always been resin, and now we're able to collect pixies for pixie dust. And we're able to sprinkle that in our bags.
That's
resin
what it
and
is.
pixie dust.
Okay. Good. But it actually used to be corn, right? I mean, wasn't it actually corn and other, like you said,
absolutely,
organic
making it corn,
grains?
But it was always something that was like, I never wanted that in my shop, just mice going after it and stuff. It just never appealed to me. I always wanted to do, we made, crappy duck cloth bags. They're good, but it's still duck canvas. And if they ever get moisture, they shrink weird, and, and the corners were pointy. So, I mean, we used to do that back in the day. That's where the sport kind of evolved from, and we did that. And now I feel like the way we do it, I mean, it's funny. You can get these pros, and they could put those old corn bags in them, and they could still probably do a lot of great things with those old bags. I mean, do you need all this advanced technology? No, you don't. But
so it's basically some sort of synthetic resin beads now that are inside all these bags.
Yes. Yeah. Everything has some form of resin. This is probably from the injection molding industry, where you have like resin pellets, so small kind of, beads of plastic, so.
And then do you change so do different bags have different types of resin beads? Yes. Have we gotten that specific now?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So the type of plastic makes a difference, what it's filled with. A lot of times you can fill them to adjust the density of the material, and then the shape, right? If you have a big pellet versus a small one, if you have a flat disc versus a round, it all impacts like how, when that bag makes an impact, how those pellets, interact with each other. Is there friction between those pellets? That's going to dampen things out. If there's no friction, then they're going to kind of explode a little bit more. And so when you see a little bit more of a bounce, the bag just has a tendency to bounce higher. You can expect those pellets to probably be pretty darn slippery relative to each other, and have probably mostly resin in them. So they're just maybe a little bit harder, and they're able to basically rebound energy more efficiently. Our bags tend to have a little bit more damped properties, meaning like when it hits, they're going to lose a little bit of energy in that interaction, right? So we're not going to, we initially started off thinking that was really what you wanted. You don't want much kick left or right. You want the bag to be able to hit and kind of just track, towards the hole, because not all of us have perfectly flat bags. And as the sport evolved, yes. And which is really, really great, is the sport's evolved in this thing where there's different things that people are doing, where they're blocking, and then they're trying to get a bag to basically hop up or interact differently, to minimize risk, but to acquire higher DPR. So phenomenal the way the sport has evolved. My thinking was purely one way, but it's clear that there's other solutions out there that work just as great.
By the way, kind of counterintuitive that if you make the resin kind of take away some of the energy, actually creates a faster bag. You know what I mean? Like that, like you would think, you'd want more energy to make the bag faster, but actually the way that you dampen the energy creates a faster bag. I find that to be kind of more interesting.
Well, I mean, in not all cases, you can take Tony Smith, when the bag hits, the way he's able to carry the bag up the board is by skipping, so the bag actually jumps up in the air for a short period of time, and it's not really touching the board.
So little control that way. Yeah, I don't know how he does it, because there's no control over the bag.
It's just brilliant artistry of technique. It's phenomenal what these players are adapting towards. So that's the great thing about the sport, I think.
Well, guys, unfortunately, I knew it was going to happen quickly, out of time. So, yeah, Mark, I truly want to dive in sometime. We'll do like a special episode during the off season about this sometime. We can talk about this literally for another hour. So, but hey, great to catch up with you. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for everything you do for the sport. It's been great to get a chance to know you and your players, and we'll for sure have you on again. So thank you, brother.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Bye.
All right, Mark Pryor. I've been waiting to have him on for a long time. And again, literally, we need to have an entire show. We just talk about the evolution of the bag. We got to go. We got like 10 seconds left.
Yeah. These guys are basically becoming the new general managers, right?
Yes.
They're picking the players. They are essentially the GMs of the sport.
Yeah, a lot of responsibilities. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good week, Bernie. I'll talk to you later.
See you, buddy.
All right, bye, everybody.